Let's get into the part where we talk about what lifestyle choices you need to make in order to achieve FIRE. A lot of people are giving all sorts of advice on how you should save and what food to eat and how to not buy new bed but make one yourself instead, etc., etc. I personally find this unnecessary because literally every person is in their own unique situation. What you need to know are the principles. Basically, the bigger the delta or the difference between what you make and what you save, the faster you will achieve FIRE. Shocking, I know. But sometimes in the ocean of complexity, we need to be reminded of the simple things. From that principle comes your choice that depends on your personal preference. If you earn 100K a year and you spend 30K, you would be worse off than if you had spent 20K. But what if you want to spend 30K for the life you live now? Well, try to make 110K. Either way, you'll be saving 80,000. You also have to decide on how much you are willing to sacrifice. Each dollar you spend is a dollar that could have been invested. So ask yourself if you really want to spend it. For example, if you want to buy that new shiny car, it will cost you 3 years of freedom. It's not a mind trick, this is literally how reality works, but people often forget about it. Now, maybe that trade-off is worth to you, maybe it isn't. You need to decide, but you have to know what that trade-off is. And from here, the combinations become endless. Do you work 2 jobs? Do you work 1 and save obsessively? Do you work 2 and still save obsessively? Or do you start a business with a high likelihood of failure, but also with that option having the fastest way to success? It's up to you to decide, because no one knows you better than yourself. Another lifestyle choice you have to make is something I see a lot in the FIRE movement, and that is geo-arbitrage. It is the idea of either moving to a lower cost place while you accumulate your wealth if you are able to work remotely, or working in a more expensive area and then immediately switching to a lower cost area once you retire. On the surface, this seems smart, and indeed, for some people it might be. But honestly, I see it as very problematic, and trust me, I have given it a lot of thought, especially once the income from my investments grew large enough to support me without having to work. My issue is this. It is an extreme sacrifice to live for years at some place and then suddenly uproot yourself just so that you can save a bit on rent or retire a few years earlier. And the more you want to save, the more absurd and remote the geo-arbitrage has to get. I will give an extreme example in order to illustrate the point, but sometimes when I listen to FIRE enthusiasts, I see it is something that actually gets done. So, imagine you're living in New York. You grew up there, you studied there, your family and childhood, colleague, friends are there. You marry in New York, your spouse's friends and family are also there. You hustle in a job, you create connections and friendships in it. Same for your spouse. But since you are both passionate about achieving FIRE and understand that you won't be able to retire before you reach your 60s if you keep living there, you decide that you want to retire in your early 40s and you move to rural Peru. You are immediately able to not work and live off your investments. Great! Now you have moved from New York, USA, to a small town in Peru. All your friends and relatives are on another continent. You don't speak the local language, and a lot of people don't speak English. There are no yoga and CrossFit classes that you used to go to. Hospitals are shit. And if you have children, good luck with the education system. Well, okay, you've achieved FIRE. And what's the point? I'm obviously giving an extreme example here, but I see a lot of people who want to move to countries where they have no social connections and that have vastly different healthcare and school systems, and it just seems weird to me. I mean, yes, it's gonna take you longer to achieve your FIRE number if you're living in a more expensive city, but you're going to be bored in your small town in Peru after 6 months anyways, and you will probably find something to work. So why not simply prolong your work in New York or London or Paris or Athens or wherever while you wait to achieve your FIRE number? I find it discouraging to even move cities, let alone countries and continents. The idea of leaving all the friendship networks and family behind just so that I can stop working 5 years earlier is something that I just don't understand. I would much rather find a second job or try my luck in business. Now, I get that if you're moving from California to Utah or from London to Liverpool, it's not that big of a deal in terms of culture, school and healthcare systems, but also the cost of living arbitrage isn't as great. Generally, the bigger arbitrage you want to make and the more years you want to pull your fire closer to your present, the more stuff you have to sacrifice. Whether you want to do it, it's up to you. And talking about moving abroad, the next lifestyle choice you have to decide on is children. First, you have to decide whether you want to have them, and if yes, how many. For example, I want to have at least 3 children, and I also don't want them to grow in an apartment, regardless of how big and with a great location it is. So even though right now I have achieved an okay income from my investments that would allow me to say I am retired, even for the place where I currently live, the picture will vastly change when I have 3 kids. And so just because you have calculated that you can live off X number of dollars a month right now, as a, let's say, single dude renting a 1-bedroom apartment, does not mean that you can stop working when you achieve these X numbers of monthly income from your investments. It is pointless, because the moment your first child appears, you will have to re-enter the workforce, but you will be at a severe disadvantage. And since we already talked about geo arbitrage, if that is hard when you're just with a partner, imagine doing it with kids. For me, that becomes from simply hard to a nightmare. You can't just tell your 12-year-old kid to move with you from Sweden to the rural jungles of Vietnam. They might not even know English well enough yet. If you're not living in an English-speaking country, the schools will be in the local language. It's just not something I think is healthy. So have these things in mind and include them in your calculations. Next and last in our list of lifestyle choices you need to make in order to achieve FIRE is the huge impact personality has to play. This is something I have not heard anyone talk about, but it is vital for your success. Before that though, if you're getting value out of this video, press the like button and subscribe to the notification bell. That way, you show me you like the content and would want more of it, and also when you're subscribed with the bell, you won't miss any of my future videos. So let's talk about the significance of your personality type. When you start any endeavor, especially such a long and life-changing one as the pursuit of FIRE, it is crucial that you know what type of character you have and how you will react to certain things that will get in your way. I'm talking about knowing yourself, yes, but also about literal scientific personality traits that will help you better understand yourself. One such test that I have used a lot is a test I heard from Jordan Peterson called the Big 5 personality type. There are tons of free tests out there. You can Google it and do one for free. I highly recommend it, and I will give you a brief example why. A key feature of FIRE, especially its more extreme forms, is frugality and sacrificing a lot today for a better future. This character trait is known as conscientiousness in the Big 5 and is basically responsible for dutifulness, orderliness, discipline, work ethic, and the ability to delay gratification. I, for example, scored 97 out of 100 on this trait in my Big 5 test I did on Jordan Peterson's website, which means that out of 100 people in a room, on average, I will be more conscientious than 97 of them. So for me, for example, I actually take great pleasure in delaying gratification and working for the future. I also have a very hard time relaxing. I just can't stop working at 5 p.m. because it's 5 p.m. I stop working when what I want to do is done. And that might take months and even years. But I was born that way. If you aren't, of course, it is a good skill to cultivate. But if you have something like 25 conscientiousness, you will never be able to get it up to 97. And that's okay. You probably have other strengths, which will be my weaknesses. But what I'm saying is that if you are very low in conscientiousness, it is absolutely catastrophic for you to start the extreme FIRE movement where you delay gratification for 15 years and withhold every possible penny in order to invest it. Or do 14-hour work days for a decade. I'm not saying to give up, but perhaps try achieving it in a different way or with a longer time frame. Perhaps you are low in conscientiousness, but very high in the trait openness and low in neuroticism. In that case, you might not be able to save and work as much, but you might be more suited to do the already discussed geo arbitrage, which allows you to live a fulfilling life by moving to a lower cost area. These are all just examples of combinations of different traits which I'm giving you in order to get you to start thinking. Who are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you excel at? The answers to these questions will let you know what type of FIRE you want, how fast can you realistically achieve it, and also, the most important question of all, Do you actually want and need it, or are you just living someone else's ambition? This video is part of my complete guide I did on how to achieve financial independence, retire early, and all the investment, psychological, and social aspects you need to consider. To find out what the full strategy is, click on the video that has just appeared on your screen.